Nirliptanandaji, welcome.
Thank you.
And also, Swami just wants you to let you know you have a large online audience as well. Not on the screen this year, but they're there. Yes, they're also. Yes. Yes.
And they have also got registered?
Yes, well, they don't register, but they wrote to me and for the schedule, and so they're following. Whoever can follow in real time will follow in real time. Otherwise, they will watch a little later. But there will be quite a few people watching online right now.
But only those who have written to you, they only will have access.
No, everybody has access because it's on the DLS YouTube.
Achha.
So in the initial letter, I wrote and I said it would be on the YouTube. And then I said anybody who wants the schedule, they can write to me. So
now when this is the YouTube fellows also will see this?
yes, yeah, the YouTube, yes, live. So they're part of our audience.
Oh, I thought that whether YouTube will be afterwards. Or
No,
okay.
live right now.
Okay.
So they're hearing us saying this and
Oh.
welcoming them also.
And so we have to be very careful.
Yeah.
That means the whole world will be watching us, observing us, and then make critical assessment also. They will see from their own points of view. गणपतये नमः। ॐ गुरुभ्यो नमः। ॐ ऐं सरस्वत्यै नमः। ॐ नमः शिवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते रामचन्द्राय। ॐ नमो नारायणाय। ॐ श्री परमात्मने नमः। ॐ परब्रह्मणे नमः। ॐ आत्मने नमः। वक्रतुंड महाकाय सूर्यकोटि समप्रभ निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। या कुन्देन्दुतुषारहार धवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रावृता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेतपद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युतशङ्करप्रभृतिभिर्देवैः सदा वन्दिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजड्यापहा। नमः शिवानन्दाय गुरवे सच्चिदानन्दमूर्तये निष्प्रपञ्चाय शान्ताय निरालम्बाय तेजसे। ध्यानमूलं गुरोर्मूर्तिः पूजामूलं गुरोः पदं मन्त्रमूलं गुरोर्वाक्यं मोक्षमूलं गुरोः कृपा। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं। लोकाभिरामं रणरङ्गधीरं राजीवनेत्रं रघुवंशनाथं कारुण्यरूपं करुणाकरन्तं श्रीरामचन्द्रं शरणं प्रपद्ये। नमामि नारायणपादपङ्कजं करोमि नारायणपूजनं सदा। वदामि नारायणनाम निर्मलं स्मरामि नारायणतत्त्वमव्ययम्। ओंकारं बिन्दुसंयुक्तं नित्यं ध्यायन्ति योगिनः कामदं मोक्षदं चैव ओंकाराय नमो नमः। दिवि भूमौ तथाकाशे बहिरन्तश्च मे विभुः यो विभात्यो भासात्मा तस्मै सर्वात्मने नमः। ओम श्री परमात्मने नमः। ओम परब्रह्मणे नमः। ओम आत्मने नमः। Revered Atman, revered self. All the participants of the spiritual retreat and also whether physically present here or through online, those who have joined the spiritual retreat. So, my pranams to all of you, salutations to all of you, and also a hearty welcome to all of you for our spiritual retreat. And this year we are having this spiritual retreat as usual, as before. From today it starts and up to 31st it will continue. And then it is very nice that all of you are in the spiritual retreat, you have joined this. And for this, we have got the theme that when bliss alone exists, how can there be sorrow? This is a very important subject and very pertinent point also, because when ultimately we all want happiness, and that is our primary concern. So this topic also is very much relevant to all of us, and it is of our something to do with our life, and it is part and parcel of our life, and it is deeply connected with our pattern of living and our thinking and everything else. So this, when we say bliss, bliss alone exists. Bliss means, you see, it is perfect happiness. It is unalloyed happiness. It is absolute happiness. And that means there will be only happiness and nothing else. And then it will be without any pain, sorrow, suffering, misery, all these troublesome things. It will not be there. That is bliss. So it is happiness alone. Now the point is, we see sorrow in this world for our purposes, for our thinking, and it's our experience that we see only sorrow. For us, there is only sorrow. We see and experience only happiness. And we think perhaps there is only sorrow in this world. Sorrow alone exists. Now, if sorrow alone exists, how can there be bliss? How can there be opposite of it? And then, even if there is some bliss, etc., we don't know. We are not aware of it. We have never experienced this. We have no idea about it. So if this is our condition, that means we are just opposite. We think that when sorrow alone exists, how can there be bliss? This is our, you see, present condition, our predicament. And it is, I think, true with most of us. It is only, we see in the world only sorrow, and no happiness, and let alone bliss. So this being the condition, now how can we say that, you see, bliss alone exists and that sorrow does not exist? When bliss alone exists, how can there be sorrow? That is very true. This is the proposition now we are putting forth, and how, on what basis we are saying this, etc. Now, if we say that bliss alone exists, let us see. What is the basis of it? Why do we say that bliss alone exists? And what will be the grounds for that? Now we know that there is a world, and we also know that, you see, God has created this world. I think nobody will dispute this. So God has created this world. And so before the world was created, the world was not there. And so who was there? What was there? God alone was there. God alone was existing before the world came into existence, or before the world was created. This is a thing which is there. Otherwise there is something We see around the world, there is something called the world. It must have been created by somebody. And that somebody must be, who else? You can give any name to it, but then you see somebody must have created this. Otherwise, we can't have a thing without anybody's, you see, this work. So now let us assume world is there, it has been created, so God has created. We assume that person or the thing or the being which might have created, some name you can give, it is God. Now God created. So before the world was created, there was no world. God alone was existing. So this we have to logically accept, that God alone was there before the world was created. And so when He created the world, etc., God is the cause of this world. And if He is the cause of the world, how He is it? That means because He brought it about. So God is called the instrumental cause. He is also the efficient cause of this world. So that is why it is called God is the instrumental or the efficient cause of the world. And for creating something, you must have some material. From where this material will come? And for the purpose of creation of this world, what was the material available to God so that He could create this world? Because nothing else was there. God alone was there in the beginning, at that time, before the world was created. So He did not have any material to create this world. He would not have got any material. So how would He create the world? So God thought that because I want to create the world, so let me, a portion of it, I will give it for creation of this world. So God provided the material for the world, for creation of this world. That is why, and since there was nothing, God can divide Himself. God cannot make a part out of Him something separate from Him. So then He had no other choice. God Himself became the world. God Himself was the material for this world. So that is why it is said that God is also the material cause of the world. God is instrumental or efficient cause of the world, and He is also the material cause of the world. So whatever we all see, it is only God. God alone, you see, is visible to us in this form. All the names and forms, all the objects which have been created, it is all God Himself only. God only created this, giving the material. He became the world. So now if what we see, if He alone became the world, who exists now? God alone exists now also. Before creation, He alone was there. He alone existed. And with the creation, after creation also, He alone is now present. He exists. So now also God alone exists. Now what will happen after when the world is dissolved? Anything which has been created, one day it has to be dissolved. And when it will be dissolved, what will happen to this world? At that time, world will not be there. So when He will dissolve, He will Himself take the world into Himself. And at that time, so He will become without any differentiation, without any any other object, any other thing. He alone will also be existing after the dissolution. So God was present before creation. God is present with the creation, and He is Himself the creation. And after dissolution, He alone will be there. So God alone is there in all the three periods of time. Other than God, nothing else is there. So now also God alone exists. God alone is. This we have to accept. This is actually the logical conclusion. Now, This being so, who is God? What is the nature of God? God is actually, because He is with form, He is also without form. Ultimately, before the world was created, He was without form. He was formless. And God's real nature, God, the true nature of God is, it is called Sat Chit Ananda. Existence, consciousness, bliss. Because nothing else is there, existence, consciousness, bliss, absolute. So, the nature of God is that He is bliss. He only exists, He only has all knowledge, and His knowledge is His own form, and bliss is also His form. So, God and bliss are not two different things. They are not separate. God is bliss. God is bliss alone. So, in that case, if God alone exists, and if God's nature is bliss, then what does it exist now? Bliss alone exists. Because other than God, nothing is there. God is bliss, all bliss. So, now also, since God alone exists, bliss alone exists. We have to accept it. Do you question it? No, we have no alternative, no other way of going out. You see, it is only God alone. So bliss alone exists. So I think, although our experience that we see only sorrow, experience only sorrow, actually there is bliss alone. Bliss alone exists. Now, the nature of bliss is that, you see, which is without sorrow. Sorrow will have no place in bliss. If there is sorrow in bliss, then it ceases to be bliss. So, there is no sorrow in bliss. There is no sorrow in God. There is also no sorrow in bliss. The bliss is without sorrow. So, in this, that is why it is called bliss absolute, happiness absolute. It is pure happiness. There is no sorrow at all. So, sorrow does not exist at all. That God is bliss, about that Lord Krishna also says in the Bhagavad Gita, I am the abode of that absolute bliss. In the Gita it is there. Brahmano hi pratisthaham sukhasya ikantikasya cha, like that. Amritasya chabhyasa, other things are there. Sukhasya aikantikasya. That means, you see, pure, absolute bliss. I am the abode of that. That means absolute bliss is there in me only. This is what it is declared in the Bhagavad Gita. That is why we say God alone is. And God is the repository of all bliss. God is bliss alone. And so now also we have only bliss. We have accepted it. Now because there is only bliss, now all the creation, all the beings that we see, they all also have come from bliss only. All of us, we have come from bliss. In the Upanishad it has been told that, you see, this from bliss alone, bliss is Brahman or bliss is God. And from bliss alone, all the beings have come. They have been born and they all sustain only in bliss. They thrive in bliss. Their existence is in bliss only. So from bliss alone, all these things are born. We have all come from bliss. You, me, I, everybody, you see, all of us, all the living beings, not only living beings, everything, even inanimate things also, they have come from bliss only. And in bliss, by bliss alone, all the things which have been born, all the beings which have been, they live in bliss alone. So they have been born from bliss. We are all born from bliss. And then we exist in bliss alone. We thrive on bliss. And then ultimately we also enter into bliss. When our part is over, our play is over, then we get into that. So there is a Upanishad mantra, it is there. Anando brahmeti vyajanat. Anandadhyeva khalu imani bhutani jayanti. Anandena jatani jivanti. Anandam prajanti abhisambhishanti. That means from bliss alone, everything is born. In bliss alone, it is sustained, and we all live, and then ultimately we go to bliss. So our existence is deeply connected with bliss alone. Our existence is bliss alone. So bliss is this world. So the whole world also is now existing only in bliss. So there is no question of having any sorrow. Sorrow is something entirely alien to the scheme of things of God, pattern of God, what he has said. There is no sorrow at all. That is why he said there is no sorrow in God. Sorrow is in the world. In the Gita also it has been said, this world which is there, etc., it is this dukkhalayam, ashasvatam. That means the world is full of sorrow, abode of sorrow. And so, sorrow is there in the world, not in God. But we said that, you see, God and world are not different. Then how can something be in the world and something not in God? This is what it is. This is the problem. Now you see, how does it happen? In bliss, in God there is no, bliss only, no sorrow. And the world also is God only. But how are we having this sorrow in the world then? How do we see from there? This is a point, you see, we have to think over very carefully. And Swami Shivananda Maharaj also said, now what is sorrow? Sorrow actually sorrow is only in our mind. It is only our imagination. It is only our wrong thinking. And because of ignorance, we see sorrow, because we are under the play of mind. And mind has both happiness and sorrow, both. Sometimes sorrow, sometimes happiness. So, mind only has created this sorrow. Mind only feels this sorrow. And because we are under this control of the mind, we are guided by the mind. For our purpose, everything is the mind only, the play of the mind only. We don't have anything else. We are not aware of anything else now. So because we are guided by the mind makes this sorrow and this happiness, both are there in the mind, because the world is a pair of opposites. So there is sorrow, there is also happiness there in the world. There is pleasure and there is also pain. So this distinction or this creation of sorrow is because of the work of our mind. So this is what we must know. But then we have accepted that actually sorrow does not exist. It has no real existence. Bliss or happiness, that alone is there, and that alone exists. That is why Swami Shivananda Maharaj, he says, very nicely he has put it. Joy is eternal. It shall never die. Sorrow is illusory. It shall never live. Like that he said. That means the sorrow is only that we think of, that we are aware of, with which we are so much deeply involved. And that becomes, rather you see, it's our life is only sorrowful, nothing else. That which we feel like that, etc., actually it does not exist. It is illusory. It is an imagination of our mind. It's an experience of our mind. But that is not our real nature. This is what is it. And Swami Shivananda Maharaj had gone beyond all this sorrow. He was always, you see, because of his God realization. And that is why he says, I am always blissful and happy. That's what Gurudev Swami Shivanand Maharaj has said. That he was also full of joy. And he was also always having only happiness, bliss. So that is why he says, I am always blissful and happy. This is what is there. So this we should understand. So bliss alone exists, and then sorrow has no place in bliss at all. And sorrow also, we have nothing to do with sorrow. Although now we have everything to do with sorrow only. We see, only feel, experience everything only sorrow. But actually, it's our wrong understanding. It is our imagination. It is a play of our mind. It is our mind only which makes us experience all these things. And because we identify ourselves with the mind, we think that we are only the mind. For our purpose, mind alone exists. Nothing else is there. That is our only instrument of, you see, coming in contact with the world, dealing with it, and also having all sorts of experience. It is only at the level of the mind. This is what we should understand. And then, what is joy? Joy is actually feeling of great pleasure or happiness. That is joy. So joy and bliss are the same thing. Some say it is joy, some say it is bliss. Both are the same things. Now, there are some related terms which are there for this bliss, which are familiar, related to it, which are, you see, having almost the same meaning. They are together. The one is bliss, one term is bliss, another is happiness, another is joy, another is also pleasure. We are familiar with these words which are used normally in connection with happiness. Now, we should understand, as we said, bliss and joy are the same thing. They are not two different things. And happiness is also bliss in some way. That means if it is perfect happiness, if there is only happiness and happiness alone and nothing else, there is no sorrow, then that also is bliss. Bliss is happiness without sorrow. So happiness also can be both for the worldly happiness or our experience in the world. It is also used for the purpose of bliss. This we should understand this. Now, what is pleasure? Pleasure actually, you see, because this is a term which is very familiar, and we are actually always dealing with this only, pleasure. Our experience is only pleasure. Pleasure means, you see, sense pleasure. Pleasures or the happiness which is derived from the sense experience. Objects coming in contact with the senses, and senses actually getting some pleasure, and mind actually works through the senses. So that is the pleasure which, when we say it is pleasure, pleasure actually is sense pleasure. And this pleasure comes from the contact with the objects. And the nature of pleasure, we should understand very clearly, carefully, that it leads to pain. Pain follows pleasure. If pain follows pleasure, what type of happiness will it be? It is not a real happiness at all. So all the sense experience that we have, sense pleasure that we have, that is not real pain. Real happiness. It is mixed with pain. And it is mixed with pain, fear, worry, or sense of it. We cannot analyze all those things now, why it is called, because that requires time. And then, hence, it is not a real happiness. Pleasure is not a real happiness. There is no happiness at all in pleasure. It is only some experience that is derived, some satisfaction which is derived from contact with the sense objects. So this is only, so it is limited, it is no good for us. We have nothing to do with this. It is only the sense pleasure which traps us into the world, and ultimately it gives us pain. So should not be our concern. It is not, we have nothing to do, we should not have anything to do with pleasure. This we must understand. Because all sense pleasure, the pleasures which come from contact of the senses and the objects, that is actually the womb of pain. Like that it is declared in the Bhagavad Gita. So it is no good at all, rather it is very harmful to us. It cannot give us real satisfaction of any desire. If we have pleasure, we want more and more of it. So our desire is not satisfied by having pleasure, sense pleasure, satisfaction of our sense urges. So that will not give us real happiness, satisfaction. Rather, it aggravates and intensifies our desires. And it makes our mind more restless. And there will be sense hankering, craving. We want more and more of this sense pleasure. Having experienced some sense pleasure, we want to have more and more of it, which is not possible, and it will lead us into pain. Because we can't get it, that is why we will be unhappy. We will be, there will be worry. And it also, this leads to a situation when, if, what will happen? The sense object which is there with me, it may go away from me. So then there is a anxiety also, restlessness. So this is all the result of the pleasure, the sense pleasure that we are having. This we must understand. So this sense pleasure is no good at all, and it is not happiness at all. Where is the question of having bliss in that? Sense pleasure is pain only in the form of pleasure. So, what have we to do with sense pleasure? And how bliss will come from that? So, it is entirely different from bliss. This we must understand. Then there is another term which is there, happiness. We have said that, this happiness is happiness, where there will be no sorrow. Because if there is sorrow, it is not happiness, or it is mixed with sorrow. Happiness mixed with sorrow is no real happiness. It is not pure happiness. So that is also not of much use to us. In the Gita, happiness, it is said, because we have got the three qualities of nature. You know that. Sattva, Raja and Tamas. And then so purity, then passion, and the third one is inertia. These three are there. So happiness that we get in the world, that is also of three kinds only, three types, according to the play of the guna. And the happiness, what is the pure happiness? That means this is sattvic happiness. That happiness is there when that will be, its nature is immediate. Initially it will be like a poison, because it is very difficult, very troublesome, and so much of work we have to do for that. It is so, initially it looks like it is poison, but afterwards it will give us happiness, make us happy. That is called sattvic happiness. And this sattvic happiness, it comes from when our mind and intellect get peace. If they are at rest, if they are peaceful, then the happiness that we get from that, that is pure happiness. That is sattvic happiness. That sloka is also there. We need not quote all that sloka here. So that is sattvic happiness. And there is rajasic happiness also. Rajasic happiness which comes from the sense contact, sense pleasure. That means sense pleasure is initially like nectar. We like it so much. Oh, very nice, beautiful, sir. So initially it is like nectar, but afterwards it leads to, it is like poison. It acts like poison. It creates restlessness. It also creates anxiety, and it also leads to pain. We have just seen. So all the sense pleasure that we have, that comes under this rajasic happiness. This rajasic happiness is also very harmful. It is not at all good for us. Then there is a third category of happiness. This third category which says that tamasic happiness. Tamasic happiness means, it says in the beginning and also in the end, it will give only delusion of our mind. And then you see it comes from sleep, sleeping too much, and also from indolence, from laziness. Nidralasya pramadotham, like that you say. Yadagre cha anubandhe cha sukham mohanam atmanah nidralasya pramadotham tattamasam udahrutam, like that the Lord says. That means the pleasure or the happiness, so-called happiness, which comes from the things, you see, anything which brings about delusion for us in the beginning and also in the end. Initially it is delusion only, and afterwards also it ends in delusion only. This is called tamasic. And then it also comes from this nidra alasya pramada, sleeping too much, and also you see this alasya, laziness, and also you see this heedlessness, pramada. These three are there. And what I think, what are these? All the useless things which are there, this comes under tamasika. This alcohol, all intoxicants, intoxicating things, and everything else are like that, etc. This is of the nature of that. So, nidra, it is also given, mentioned there, what is to be. So, tamasic happiness is no happiness at all. It is brings about delusion for us. Rajasic happiness also is no happiness for us. It is of no concern for us, because that will only bring us a pain, make the mind more restless. And sattvic pain, sattvic happiness, whether that will be any relevance to us, that is also not very much helpful. Although that is better than Rajasic and Tamasic, sattvic happiness is also not good, because by that we are attached to happiness. It brings about an attachment, bondage to happiness. That is why sattvic happiness is also no good for us. That is also not bliss. This also we must remember. So, bliss is different from all these three. Sattvic happiness, Rajasic happiness, and also Tamasic happiness. Because all the negative aspects or features of the three qualities, these types of happiness which we have just seen, which are there, they are not in bliss. Bliss is free from all these things. So, bliss is different from sattvic happiness, Rajasic happiness, and of course from Tamasic happiness also. What is that real happiness? Real happiness is that which comes through control of mind, through practice of meditation. In this Gita also, in the 6th chapter, Lord Krishna says that sattvic happiness, what is real happiness? That means the happiness which is atindriyam, that is beyond the senses, beyond the purview of the senses, and which comes through deep meditation. When the mind is totally absorbed in that, etc., then sukham atyantikam yatad buddhigrahyam atindriyam, like that it is there. That means the intense and endless happiness, and which is beyond the senses, which transcends the senses, and which ultimately, and also this buddhigrahim, that is only through our intellect, pure intellect, through our mind, that only with that it comes. It comes when we practice meditation. The Lord says, when a person goes on practicing meditation like this, he ultimately reaches the stage where, you see, which he will reach the state of bliss. There, that happiness is bliss. Atyantika sukha. Sukham, you see, atyantikam. And buddhigrahyam atindriyam. It can be grasped only by the pure intellect. It comes only for the intellect or mind. And then it is beyond senses. And it comes through meditation. That yogi who practices deep meditation, he experiences that. That is called bliss. So we must understand what is the nature of the bliss that we are talking of. That bliss which exists always, bliss alone exists. It is this type of happiness. That is intense and unalloyed and also infinite endless happiness. That is the bliss. Now, what is this nature of this happiness which is there, etc.? What is nature of bliss? How do you know that? What is that bliss? We can have a glimpse of it. You see, every day when we sleep, we go. There is something called deep sleep. We have got you see, three kinds of our experience. One is waking state, then we have got the dream state, and third is the deep sleep state. In the deep sleep means where it is the dreamless sleep. We are asleep, there is no dream. At that time, it is called deep sleep. In that deep sleep, when there is no dream, no waking state also. So sorrow of waking state will not be there. And then the restlessness or the same sorrow, different type of sorrow also is experienced in dream. That is also not there. Dream is not there. Waking state is also not there. That is called deep sleep. And in that deep sleep, we get the great happiness. It is called Ananda. And that happiness which is there, it is just a glimpse of that happiness which we are talking of. This particular happiness which is there, which is experienced by each one of us every day, in the state of deep sleep. In the deep sleep, when you, supposing you had got fortunately that particular experience, when we wake up, it is very difficult, very rarely you see we go to that deep sleep. Every day we go to the deep sleep, but it may be a very short time. But those who are, you see, the higher souls, evolved souls, they will have deep sleep for a longer period. And probably when they go to sleep, straight away they will go to deep sleep. So this deep sleep which is there, so that is called bliss. That is called Ananda. So and when we wake up from this deep sleep, what do we say? Oh, yesterday I had a very nice sleep. I did not know anything. I didn't have anything. I was very happy. Oh, but that memory of that deep sleep is still there when we wake up and come back to this waking state. So that is actually the nature of bliss. The bliss which we are talking, which alone exists, is that state. So in that deep sleep state, there is no mind. Play of mind is not there. Intellect is not there. Senses are also not there. And when this is stable, at that time only this bliss is experienced by us. And from this, as a clue, we must understand, if we also want to have this type of bliss, what should we do? We have to reach that particular stage. Not through sleep, but when we are awake. In that present state only, if we are there when we are awake, our idea should be, if we can reach that particular state or the bliss of the deep sleep, then we will have this experience of bliss. That is the bliss. This is what we must understand. So this nature of bliss it is a bliss of the deep sleep. And then at that time you see this, and it is also what is the nature of that bliss? What is its intensity? What is its extent? It is in the Upanishads, it is mentioned there. We know that Creator is there, Brahma. And Brahma has certain experience of happiness. And in the world of Brahma also, that particular some happiness is there. Whatever happiness is experienced by Brahma or by the people in the world of Brahma, that is actually much higher than all the happiness with which we are now familiar. That is and that is the highest happiness we can think of. But beyond that it says, 100 times the happiness of this world of Brahma, the Creator. That is the bliss of Brahman, the Absolute. That is the bliss of Atma. That is the bliss of, this Absolute, the reality. That is actually this bliss which we are talking of. So you can understand at what level that bliss is there. In this world, we are never familiar with this, we never experience this bliss at all, we can never imagine. There are gradations. There is first this human beings, perfect human being, he will get, supposing 1 unit of particular happiness. 100 times more than that is that of the Gandharva Loka. Different celestial regions are there. There are 100 times more, 100 times, 100 times, 100 times in intensity, in quality of that happiness. Finally, it comes to that particular state, the state of this, the happiness which is there in the world of Brahma, the creator. Higher than that is that particular, the bliss that we are talking of, which is our subject now. That you see this, the bliss alone exists, that alone, that bliss is the bliss of Brahman, the Absolute. That bliss is the happiness of God Himself. Happiness is of that our own self, that God or the Atma that is inside us. Because it is inside everybody, it is called the Atma, the self. And this self, that is our real happiness. That is happiness like this. So that is what? That is our goal. That is the happiness that we are talking about. And this happiness will come when there is no, where there is no likes and dislikes, raga dvesha will not be there, where there are no desires, where, and this is the bliss of our own soul, that is. Because our self is there inside us. Our self will not be outside us, it is there. So that bliss is there inside us. When there is no lust, anger, greed, delusion, pride, hatred, etc., all the negative qualities. Negative traits are not there at that time. When there is no egoism, and when there are no objects, and when there is no sense activity, there is no play of senses there. Senses are not there. And this is beyond the 5 seats. You know there are 5 seats we have got. The food seat, annamaya kosa, pranamaya kosa, manomaya kosa, then vijnanamaya kosa and anandamaya kosa. You are all familiar. That means you see this physical, this body which is the annamaya kosa, food sheath. Then we have got the pranamaya, the sheath of this where our vital air is there, life is there. Beyond that you see where mind is there. That is another sheath. It is mental sheath. Beyond that there is the intellectual sheath. And beyond that there is the bliss sheath. Anandamaya kosa it is called. And this bliss sheath, these are all the 5 sheaths which are there. But our self or the Absolute or God, they are beyond these 5 sheaths. That bliss that we are talking of, it is also beyond these 5 sheaths. And in the deep sleep, there is a reflection or there is you see the glimpse of that particular bliss which we are having. That is why in the bliss we feel so happy, we are very at peace, we are very comfortable. We like that also. So that is the bliss. So that is the type of nature of bliss. From this we should understand how, what is the bliss which when we say that bliss alone exists, and how can there be sorrow? Because bliss is without sorrow. Sorrow has no place in bliss. And that is also our real nature. That is also the nature of God. So this is what is there. So we have now, I think, we have accepted that bliss alone exists. And there is no place for sorrow. This is what is there. And then we will continue further. And in the next session, we will further, whatever there are other things which are there, we will try to do it. Is that okay?
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Swamiji. That talk was absolutely wonderful. Every time Swamiji gives a talk, it's more wonderful than the last one. So you understand why we always have Swamiji to give the inaugural talk, because how thorough he went into the foundation of how can we say bliss alone is. And then in all stages of what happiness or bliss looks like, what it's not and what it is. And we are really, on behalf of everyone, I think, thrilled and very grateful to you, Swamiji. And we can tell our online audience we're going to go for tea now for a half an hour. You also go for tea and come back and hear Swamiji for the second injection. Yeah. Thank you so much, Swamiji. It was
Thank you very
really,
much.
yeah. My heart is always so satisfied after Swamiji gives a talk, because it's like he covers everything. So thank you.
Thank
again,
you very much.
Swamiji.
Thanks to all of you for patient listening and bearing with me.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.